Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. This time, we're stepping back in time to Elizabethan England to explore the life and works of the one and only William Shakespeare.
You know, the guy who gave us To Be or Not to Be, Star-Crossed Lovers?
Oh yeah, more dramatic twists and turns than, well, pretty much anything.
It's incredible how his work, even after all these centuries, still has this grip on our imagination.
It really does. And for this deep dive, we're going to be using Life of William Shakespeare as our guide.
It's an excellent starting point for anyone who really wants to dig into the man behind all those masterpieces.
It covers a lot, too. His early life, the Elizabethan theater scene, all the different types of plays he wrote.
His sonnets, even the way he shaped the English language, it's really quite impressive.
Really is. But even with a whole book dedicated to his life, there's still some gaps.
Especially in those early years, those lost years.
They always spark so many questions. What was he doing during that time? Was he secretly honing his craft? Or was he living a totally different life before becoming the bard we know and love?
Right. It's a mystery.
Okay, so let's dive into those lost years then. What do we actually know about Shakespeare's beginnings?
Well, we do know he was born in Stratford-upon-Avon in 1564 to a middle-class family.
Okay, so not exactly born into the world of theater?
Not exactly. His father was a glove maker, actually.
Interesting.
And young William probably got a pretty decent education at the local grammar school, learning Latin and, the classics.
So a solid foundation, at least.
Yeah. But then between his late teens and his marriage to Anne Hathaway in 1582...
This is where things get a little fuzzy, right?
Exactly. The trail runs cold. That's where all the speculation starts swirling around.
Okay, hit me with some of those theories. What are some of the leading ideas about what he was up to?
Well, some historians believe he might have been a teacher.
Okay, makes sense. He clearly had a way with words.
Right. While others think he could have been a soldier or even a lawyer.
A lawyer. What makes them think that?
Well, you know how Shakespeare's plays are full of legal jargon?
Yeah, I've always been impressed by that. It's like he knew the ins and outs of the legal system.
Exactly. So that's one theory.
It's wild to think about him possibly arguing cases in court before captivating audiences with his plays.
It's almost like he vanished into thin air and then suddenly reappeared in London as this up-and-coming theatrical sensation.
Like a magician making a grand entrance.
I know, right? It really makes you wonder if those lost years were some kind of crucial incubation period for his genius.
Maybe he was out there soaking up all those experiences, observing people just quietly developing the skills that would make him such a master storyteller.
I like that idea. It's definitely tantalizing.
Whatever those experiences were, they clearly shaped him as a playwright. Because by the late 1580s, he's in London.
Smack dab in the middle of that bustling Elizabethan theater scene, ready to make his mark.
What a time to be alive. Can you imagine London back then?
Oh, I can only try. A city just brimming with energy, new ideas, and a real hunger for entertainment theaters popping up everywhere. Playwrights vying for the attention of audiences from all walks of life.
It sounds like the perfect breeding ground for someone as talented and ambitious as Shakespeare.
Oh, absolutely. A real pressure cooker of creativity.
So what were those early plays like? Did he jump right into writing those epic tragedies we know and love him for?
Not quite, actually. He actually started with history plays like the Henry VI trilogy.
Okay, history plays, interesting.
And those plays were a huge hit with audiences. They really established his reputation as a playwright who could weave intricate plots and create these incredibly compelling characters.
So he found his footing pretty quickly.
It seems so, but what's really interesting about these early history plays is that they reveal Shakespeare already grappling with these big, complex themes.
Well, like what?
Well, the nature of power, the consequences of ambition, the burden of leadership themes that would really become hallmarks of his later tragedies.
Even from the beginning, he wasn't just rehashing historical events. He was using them to explore something deeper.
Exactly. He was tapping into these universal truths about human nature that still resonate with us today.
It's incredible to think about that connection across centuries.
It really is. But tell me, did he stick with those history plays for long?
That's what I'm curious about. What came next?
Well, Shakespeare was always evolving, experimenting with different genres, pushing the boundaries of storytelling.
He sounds like a restless creative spirit, always looking for new ways to express himself.
Absolutely. Think of it like this. He's this young playwright bursting with ideas, and he's got this incredible playground of the Elizabethan stage to explore.
I love that analogy. It really captures that sense of creative energy.
So alongside those grand historical dramas, he starts writing comedies.
Now we're talking. This is where we see a different side of his genius emerge, right?
Yes.
Hmm.
A Midsummer Night's Dream, for instance, takes us into this whimsical world of fairies and mistaken identities and the chaotic nature of love. It's light, it's funny, but it also makes us think about the illusions we create, the power of imagination, and those absurd lengths we'll go to for love.
It's that blend of entertainment and insight that makes Shakespeare so brilliant. He can make you laugh one minute and then leave you pondering the complexities of the human heart the next. It's like he's always challenging us to think even when we think we're just there for a good time.
He's a master at that. But
Yeah.
it wasn't all sunshine and fairies. He did delve into some darker territory with those early tragedies.
Right, like Titus Andronicus, one of his first forays into tragedy, as I recall.
Exactly. A revenge tale just full of violence, betrayal, and shocking acts of cruelty.
Definitely not a lighthearted evening at the theater.
Some critics even argue that it's almost too much, too over the top in its brutality.
But even in this early tragedy, you see Shakespeare experimenting with those big themes of justice and revenge.
And the cyclical nature of violence themes that he would revisit and refine in later masterpieces like Hamlet and Macbeth.
It's like even in those early, maybe less polished works, we can already see the seeds of the ideas that would make him a legend.
Like watching a master artist finding his voice, pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
So we've got Shakespeare the historian, Shakespeare the comedian, Shakespeare the tragedian.
Oh, and don't forget Shakespeare the philosopher wrestling with those problem plays.
Right, those plays that blend elements of comedy and tragedy, often with ambiguous endings that leave audiences questioning easy answers.
Precisely. Like Measure for Measure and Troilus and Cressida. It's like Shakespeare saying, I'm not going to give you a simple moral lesson or a neat resolution. I'm going to challenge you to think for yourself, to wrestle with the complexities of human nature and the gray areas of morality.
I love that about his work. He doesn't shy away from those tough questions.
And that's part of what makes Shakespeare so relevant even today. His plays don't offer easy answers. They present us with dilemmas, with characters who are flawed and relatable, and with situations that force us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world around us.
We've covered so much ground in these early years. The history plays, the comedies, the tragedies, those thought-provoking problem plays. But this is just the beginning.
We haven't even touched on those iconic tragedies, the late romances, or those incredibly personal sonnets.
There's so much more to explore in Shakespeare's world. So stay tuned as we delve deeper into the plays that solidified his status as the greatest playwright in the English language. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of William Shakespeare. We've talked about his early plays, the history plays, those comedies, even those really thought-provoking problem plays.
But now we're entering what many consider, to be the peak of his creative powers.
The era of his great tragedies.
This is where Shakespeare really dives into the depths of human suffering.
Exploring themes of ambition, betrayal,
Revenge, and the fragility of, our very existence.
and he does it with such raw emotional power that it's impossible not to be moved, even centuries later.
It's true. It's like he's holding up a mirror.
To our own darkest impulses, our fears, vulnerabilities.
Exactly. But there's something so compelling, so captivating about these tragedies.
I agree. Why do you think we're still drawn to these stories of human downfall after all this time?
That's a good question. I think it's because they tap into these universal anxieties and truths that just transcend time and culture.
Okay, I can see that.
Take Hamlet, for instance.
Ah, yes, the quintessential tragedy.
Right. Here's this young man grappling with the death of his father, the betrayal of his family.
The weight of revenge.
It's a lot to handle.
It really is. And that famous to be or not to be soliloquy.
It's not just a philosophical musing, It's a raw expression of existential angst.
That still resonates with anyone who's ever questioned the meaning of life.
The nature of mortality, the burden of making difficult choices.
We've all been there at some point in our lives.
Exactly. And it's not just the themes either. It's the characters themselves.
Hamlet, Othello, King Lear, Lady Macbeth.
They're not just names on a page. They're complex, fully realized human beings.
Driven by desires, haunted by their pasts, and ultimately tragically flawed.
It's their humanity, even in their darkest moments, that makes them so unforgettable.
I think you're right. It's like we see ourselves in them, even in their flaws.
Absolutely. And Shakespeare doesn't shy away from showing the consequences of their actions,
The ripple effects of their choices.
In Othello, for example.
A story of jealousy and betrayal.
We see how jealousy, fueled by Iago's manipulation,
can poison a man's mind and lead to those devastating consequences.
It's a chilling reminder of how easily we can be swayed by deception.
And how destructive our own emotions can be.
It makes you think, how much of our own perceptions are shaped by the narratives others feed us?
How do we discern truth from manipulation, especially from those we trust? These are important questions.
And questions that Shakespeare forces us to confront.
Then there's King Lear, a play that explores the themes of family, power, and madness with such brutal honesty.
Lear's decision to divide his kingdom based on flattery.
His descent into madness.
And the tragic fate of Cordelia.
It's a story that speaks to the dangers of pride, the fragility of our bonds, and the devastating consequences of our own misjudgments.
It's almost too much to bear sometimes, isn't it? The sheer scale of the tragedy, the emotional intensity.
King Lear definitely stays with you long after you finished reading it or watching it.
Oh, for sure. And speaking of intensity, we can't forget about Macbeth.
A whirlwind of ambition, violence, and the supernatural.
Macbeth is fascinating because it shows how ambition,
Even when it starts from a seemingly good place.
can twist and corrupt even the most noble
The
individual,
witch's prophecies act as a catalyst.
planting the seeds of ambition in Macbeth's mind.
But it's his own choices, his willingness to succumb to those dark impulses that lead to his downfall.
Exactly. And Lady Macbeth urging her husband on,
Almost becomes a symbol of that ruthless ambition itself.
pushing Macbeth further and further down that path of destruction.
The play really raises questions about fate and free will.
Were Macbeth and his lady destined for this tragic end, or did they make choices that sealed their fate?
That ambiguity is part of what makes Shakespeare's tragedy so powerful.
He doesn't offer easy answers or moral judgments. He presents us with these complex characters caught in a web of their own making.
And leaves us to grapple with the consequences.
But, Shakespeare's genius wasn't limited to tragedy.
Right. In his later years, he shifted gears and explored a different kind of storytelling.
The realm of romance.
It's almost like, after immersing himself in all that darkness and despair, he was seeking a kind of redemption.
A glimmer of hope in the face of human frailty.
It's a really interesting perspective. I like that.
These late romances.
Plays like The Tempest, The Winter's Tale, and Cymbeline,
They have a different tone, a different energy.
they're still filled with complex characters and dramatic situations, but there's this sense of forgiveness,
Reconciliation and the possibility of second chances.
something that wasn't as prevalent in the tragedies.
It's like he's saying that even after experiencing great loss, betrayal, and even madness,
There's still hope for healing,
for restoring broken relationships.
for finding some semblance of peace,
Exactly. Take The Tempest, for instance.
where Prospero, the exiled duke, could easily seek revenge on those who wronged him.
But instead, he chooses to use his magic to orchestrate a series of events that lead to reconciliation, forgiveness, and the restoration of order.
It's a play about letting go of anger,
Embracing compassion.
choosing to create a better future, even when the past is filled with pain.
The Tempest feels almost like a meditation on the power of art itself.
The transformative nature of storytelling,
Prospero, the magician.
almost like a playwright figure, using his magic to craft a narrative that leads to redemption,
It makes you think about the power we all have to shape our own stories.
to create our own realities,
Mhm.
even amidst the storms of life.
And The Winter's Tale.
With its seemingly impossible reunion,
Its restoration of what was lost.
speaks to the enduring power of hope, the possibility of miracles.
The idea that even the deepest wounds can heal with time and forgiveness.
It's a reminder that even when things seem bleakest, there's always the potential for a new beginning.
These late romances are so full of magic, wonder, and a sense of renewal.
They remind us that even after enduring the darkest of tragedies, there's still beauty to be found in the world,
Still a capacity for love and forgiveness.
and still the possibility of a happy ending.
But we can't forget about one of the most intimate and personal aspects of Shakespeare's work.
His sonnets, those 154 poems, offer such a unique glimpse into his inner world.
His thoughts on love, beauty, time, mortality.
The complexities of human relationships.
They're like little windows into his soul, filled with passion, wit, and a profound understanding of the human heart.
And they're addressed to these two mysterious figures, the fair youth and the dark lady.
And the tone shifts so dramatically between the sonnets dedicated to each.
With the fair youth, there's this sense of admiration, longing, even a hint of eroticism.
It's a complex exploration of beauty, friendship, and the fleeting nature of youth.
And then with the Dark Lady, the sonnets become more passionate.
More tumultuous, even tinged with a sense of betrayal and frustration.
It's like he's wrestling with a love that's both intoxicating and destructive.
A love that brings both joy and pain.
The sonnets are like these little jewels.
Each one a perfectly crafted exploration of a particular emotion or idea.
And the language.
Oh, the language.
Shakespeare uses rhyme, meter, and imagery to create these incredibly dense and evocative poems.
That can be read and reread, always revealing new layers of meaning.
And they're not just about romantic love either.
They touch on themes of time, mortality, the nature of art.
Even the legacy we leave behind.
They're these timeless meditations on the human condition, written with a depth of feeling and a mastery of language that continues to captivate readers centuries later.
We've talked about his plays, his tragedies, his romances, his sonnets, but we can't wrap up this deep dive without acknowledging his incredible impact on the English language itself.
His influence is undeniable.
It's almost impossible to quantify how much he enriched our vocabulary.
He gave us new ways to express ourselves.
And shaped the way we communicate, even today.
It's true. He introduced thousands of new words and phrases
That have become so ingrained in our everyday speech that we often don't even realize their origin.
Think about it. Break the ice, green-eyed monster. Wear your heart on your sleeve.
Wild Goose Chase, Heart of Gold.
All Shakespeare.
It's like he expanded the vocabulary of human emotion.
Gave us more nuanced ways to articulate those feelings of love, jealousy, ambition, despair.
All the things that make us who we are.
And it's not just the words themselves, it's the way he uses them.
His metaphors, his imagery, his ability to create these vivid word pictures that evoke such powerful emotions.
It's part of what makes his work so enduring and universally appealing.
He didn't just write plays. He shaped the way we think, the way we feel, the way we express ourselves.
He gave us a language to grapple with the complexities of human existence.
And that's a legacy that continues to inspire and influence us centuries later.
Absolutely. And to truly understand Shakespeare's impact, we need to delve into the world in which he created his masterpieces.
The Elizabethan theater scene?
Specifically, his involvement with the Globe Theater.
A space that wasn't just a building.
But a cultural phenomenon that shaped the way his plays were written and performed.
Welcome back to our Shakespearean adventure. We've traveled through his life, his plays, his sonnets, even his impact on the English language itself. But now
we're stepping back in time even further.
to Elizabethan London.
Standing before the Globe Theater, a space almost as legendary as the Bard himself.
The Globe wasn't just a building, was it?
Oh no, not at all. It was a cultural phenomenon. Imagine this. An open-air, circular theater with a stage that thrust out into the audience.
Wow, so the actors were really surrounded by the audience?
They were. It created this incredible energy and intimacy between the actors and the people watching, a real connection.
It must have been quite a spectacle. I could almost hear the groundlings cheering and jeering.
Oh, absolutely. And the actors projecting their voices to reach the farthest corners of the yard.
So different from the theaters we're used to today.
Right. It makes you wonder how Shakespeare became involved in the Globe.
Was he just a playwright, or was there more to it?
Well, Shakespeare was much more than just a playwright. He was actually a shareholder in the company that built and ran the Globe. Yes. The Lord Chamberlain's Men, later known as the King's Men. So he had a financial stake in the theater's success, and he was deeply involved in its operations.
So the Globe wasn't just a place to stage his plays, it was his creative home.
Exactly. A space where he could collaborate with actors, experiment with new ideas, and really connect with his audience in a way that wasn't possible anywhere else.
It makes you wonder how much the Globe itself influenced the way he wrote.
Oh, I'm sure it did. Do you think he had the Globe in mind when he was creating those epic battle scenes, those intimate conversations, those moments of pure theatrical magic?
I have to imagine so. It seems like such a unique and inspiring space.
Well, the design of the Globe, with its limited set pieces and its reliance on the actors' physicality and language to create the world of the play, definitely encouraged a certain style of writing.
Can you give me an example?
We'll take the chorus speeches in Henry V, for example. The chorus directly addresses the audience, asking them to use their imagination to fill in the gaps in the staging.
Ah, that makes sense.
That was a technique perfectly suited to the Globe, where elaborate sets and special effects weren't always possible.
It's like Shakespeare saying, I know we can't show you 1,000 ships sailing to France, but imagine it with me. Let's create this world together.
It really speaks to the power of language and the collaborative nature of theater, doesn't it?
It does. And what about those famous soliloquies?
Ah, yes. Those moments where a character speaks their innermost thoughts and feelings directly to the audience, those moments were incredibly powerful on the Globe stage.
I can only imagine, with the actor standing alone, illuminated by a single spotlight.
Sharing their heart with the crowd, it created this sense of intimacy, this direct connection between the character and the audience.
That's hard to replicate in other theatrical settings, isn't it?
It is. But sadly, the original Globe burned down in 1613.
Oh no, what a loss. Not just for Shakespeare and his company, but for London as a whole.
The Globe had become a symbol of the city's cultural vibrancy, a place where people could escape from the everyday world.
And immerse themselves in stories that made them laugh, cry, and think deeply about the human condition.
Thankfully, a reconstruction of the Globe was built near the site of the original theater.
That's wonderful. So people today can still experience Shakespeare in a space that's very close to the one he wrote for.
It's truly a testament to his enduring legacy, don't you think?
It is centuries after his death. Shakespeare's plays continue to be performed on stages all around the world,
In countless languages.
and they continue to resonate with audiences of all ages and backgrounds.
His characters, his themes, his language, they've become woven into the fabric of our culture.
Shaping the way we think about love, loss, ambition, power, the very meaning of being human.
We've covered so much ground in this deep dive.
From Shakespeare's humble beginnings to his rise as a theatrical icon, from his comedies to his tragedies, from his sonnets to his impact on the English language.
It's been quite a journey, but even after all this exploration, there's still a sense of mystery surrounding him, isn't there?
There is almost a sense that we've only scratched the surface of his genius.
That's the beauty of Shakespeare, isn't it? He continues to fascinate and challenge us, even after all these centuries.
His work is like a vast and endlessly deep ocean.
And every time we dive in, we discover something new. Something that sparks our imagination, something that makes us question, something that makes us feel more deeply connected to the human experience.
So as we conclude our Shakespearean deep dive, we leave you with this. What resonates most with you about Shakespeare? What questions do his plays raise for you? And how do you see his influence in the stories we tell and consume today? Share your thoughts with us. And until next time, happy exploring.